All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Forward Through Ferguson's community update. We are excited to share with you the work that has happened this year and share some plans that we have for the upcoming new year. We will start off with doing introductions, both of staff and of the organization, have an introduction of our new leadership and a chance for you to meet our new executive director. We will talk a little bit about the work updates of 2023, and we also completed a new strategic plan this year, so we'll have an opportunity to share that. And then we'll talk a little bit about what's next. At the end of the presentation, we will have time for Q&A. You can use the Q&A feature in the Zoom chat, and we'll be sure to answer your questions. And then as well, we have opportunities for you to connect with us after this and, hope to have a one-on-one with you in the future. So my name is Sarah Paracha. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the lead resource development catalyst. I will pass it on to Stephen to introduce himself, Yane, Ja, and then Fabra.
Hi, my name is Stephen Young. I use he, him pronouns, and I am a development catalyst here at Forward Through Ferguson.
My apologies. Hi, my name is Yane Robinson. I serve as the communications catalyst here with Forward Through Ferguson, and my pronouns are she, hers.
My pronouns are she and they.
Hi, everybody. I'm Fabra. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the lead racial equity capacity catalyst.
Thank you. Oh, Ja and I are in the same room. I'm going to let Ja introduce herself one more time.
Hello, I'm Jalian Yang. I'm the Director of Storytelling and Communications. My pronouns are she and they.
Thank you for saying it again. I thought maybe I just didn't hear it on my own audio, so probably everyone else didn't too. Thank you, Ja.
I've had this experience. Like, who's talking? Who's unmuting?
Yeah, no problem. So, for folks that have been following FTF for a while, you all know that we have had a leadership transition over the last year where I had served as the interim executive director while our board and our organization worked together for strategic planning, as well as thinking about what does it mean to really bring on a new leader and set them up for success. So we recently, over the last 2 months, have said yes and welcomed Ms. Annissa McCaskill, who's our new executive director and lead strategy catalyst. Welcome, Annissa. I'm so happy to have you here. So I'll just pass it to you so you can say a couple words to the group. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabra. So first and foremost, welcome everyone. I think we have a lot of exciting information to share with you today, but most especially, I want to make sure that you all understand just the joy that we have in the work that we're doing, and it's contagious because I am thrilled to be here, and you'll hear more from me later, but I just wanted to say welcome. And hopefully you will be as excited about what we have done and what we will have coming up as we are. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Sarah.
Thank you. And now we'll just talk a little bit about our organization before we get into the work. So Stephen, I'll have you kick us off.
Sounds good. So here at Forward Through Ferguson, our mission is to center impacted communities and mobilize accountable bodies to advance racially equitable systems and policies that ensure all people in the St. Louis region can thrive. In our vision, we envision a transformed St. Louis region where, regardless of race and zip code, there is justice for all, the opportunity to thrive, and boundless possibility for all of our youth. And I forgot to hand it off, and then I'm going to hand this off to Fabra.
Thanks, Stephen. Okay, everyone. So what did we do this year? This year was exciting for a couple of reasons. I mentioned earlier that we had a leadership transition. So our former executive director, David Dwight, completed his service to FTF and has started his own business and own company doing really well. So shout out to you, David, for all of your service to FTF, and welcome to Annissa, as I mentioned earlier. But we also doubled the size of the staff. So we welcomed Sarah, Stephen, Madhav, and Yane this year, which is a big deal for us. We went from historically having a staff of 2 or 3 people to now having 10 full-time staff members, which is a really, really, really big milestone for our organization. So welcome again to our new staff, and thank you for all of the work that you do. So, public presentations, we were called on a lot this year. As everybody who has been following the news and following St. Louis, there's been a lot of conversations around, like, what does it look like for St. Louis to continue to build its capacity for racial equity? So some of the ways that we've been out in the community in doing that was presenting at the Diversity Awareness Partnership Summit. We actually offered 2 presentations. One was about FTF content specifically, and additionally in partnership with Gladiator Consultants about our justice philanthropy framework and initiatives. So shout out to our friends at Gladiator and our friends at Diversity Awareness Partnership. We also worked on a series of engagements with North Newstead Association's residents, particularly engaging their active older residents in our Transforming 911 research and power building toolkits. So shout out to North Newstead for really being interested in transforming 911 and thinking about what does it mean for seniors and older residents to continue to help the community advocate for alternative measures to public safety. We also were called on by Venture Cafe and Tech STL to provide some perspectives on the future of philanthropy. So Sarah and I, as well as Nicole, our Director of Community Partnerships, actually presented twice at Venture Cafe this year and had some really fruitful and interesting conversations with the community about what does it mean to build the capacity for racial equity within the system of philanthropy, and how do we utilize transformative tools of philanthropy to make sure that Black and people of color in the St. Louis region become equitable owners of local philanthropy. So that was really cool. I'm probably supposed to go through this a little bit quickly. I'm kind of looking at Sarah. So, I mean, you all could probably, read this slide, but in short, I think we've done our best to just be back out into community since we're back in person, mostly as an organization. And these are some of the ways we were able to give some voice to what's important to us currently. So in addition to our public speaking engagements, we also continue to lead the project management of the Racial Healing and Justice Fund. And, happy and proud to announce that the $800,000 from Cycle 3 has officially been allocated to 42 community organizations. And so, we received a record amount of applications for funding through RHJF in this final cycle of the pilot. And yeah, it was a rigorous but incredible process working with the folks that you see here listed on the slide, the Community Governance Board, to help make a solid decision about these 42 organizations. Although it was a really, really tough choice, all of those applications were viable and were wonderful. So just shout out to the St. Louis community of healers and community organizers and folks doing work within our systems to make sure that our people get what they need. So shout out to you all. So here's just the general profile of, what the 42 organizations generally worked on. So one of the things that is interesting about RHJF is that we have a broad amount of funding priorities, because we understand that when we talk about healing and justice and healing justice together as a framework, complex issues require complex solutions, and it also requires flexibility in how we think about community-based grant making and trust-based grant making. So this year, in this cycle, the overall categories were general racial equity, capacity building, as well as social justice-based organizations. We also honed in on a focus on urban farming and land use and the ways in which the community heal through use of the land. There was also a focus on youth programming, of course, and youth development. So several organizations fell within that. Also in education and literacy specifically, and thinking about the ways in which we utilize books and literacy and tools of literacy to build community. Also in cultural assets. So the ways in which our cultural asset community is still resourced to do liberation and healing type of work. Infant and maternal health and pregnancy support is a huge one, of course, because of the outcomes that we have in our local region. And then also general community engagement with elders, with folks in the religious community, as well as people who in general like to stay engaged with having, tough conversations about the future. So those were the general areas that were covered. In addition to our other speaking engagements, I think a really big celebration from this year was that we had our third Racial Equity Summit. So we closed out with 770 registered attendees, which is awesome. Online in 2021, we had 1,000 folks registered in 2021, and we thought, oh, wow, this is crazy. It's just because it's the pandemic. Everybody wants to be online. Oh, we'll probably only have 300 or 400 in person, but no, we exceeded our goal and met over 700 people at the America Center. So deep gratitude to all the organizations that are listed here, as well as the numerous sponsors and community partners that helped us make sure that another strong racial equity summit happened. And I will pass it to Ja, who will talk some more about Justice for All.
Thank you, Fabra. So Justice for All obviously has been a big pillar of our work since we started a strategic priority, even with our roots in the Ferguson Commission. And as you may know, in the last couple of years, we've really been focusing on transforming 911. So if you don't know what it is a community accountability and advocacy tool. We're examining the St. Louis 911 system, and it also serves as a call to reimagine public safety. Just a little caveat is that currently transforming911.org is down. I learned that today and I'm working on fixing it. But at any other time, it should work. But either way, if you're interested in watching some of the videos on the work that we've done, you can go to our YouTube page. Just go youtube.com/@STLChange. But this timeline is here to show you that as early as 2019, we've been really focusing and honing in on what is policing and what is public safety and what does that look like? What are the intersections? What are the opportunities? And so one of the things that we do is called the State of St. Louis Report, where we're looking at movement tracking, essentially 189 calls to action from the Ferguson Commission, what has changed and what hasn't changed year to year. And so in 2019, our focus was on policing, and we talked to community residents in various municipalities, anywhere from Ferguson to O'Fallon Park to Dutchtown. And the residents really named that first responder alternatives are a major priority. And so since then, we've been really educating community residents about how policing works in St. Louis, what are the structures for changing policies and budgets as well. And then in 2021, we formed the First Responder Alternative Pilot Coalition that included stakeholders, residents, experts, people in violence prevention, and some of our community partners to talk about if St. Louis were to have an alternative where people could call 911 and be routed to compassionate, highly trained civilian first responders, as it exists in cities across the country, like Eugene, Oregon, or even Oakland. What would that look like? And so at the same time, our data and research team started really focusing on transforming 911 and thinking about when they look at data from 2015 to 2020, the calls to the St. Louis County Police Department, what are people really calling for? And what does that tell us about where we should be investing our time and our resources? And so 2022 was when we launched transforming911.org. And we also had 3 community events across the St. Louis region. We shared our initial findings about how basically most of the time when people call 911, it's really for service and medical reasons. It's not really for what the FBI would class as major crimes. And so that really tells us that we should be really investing more in health and human services, behavioral health response, de-escalation, things like that. And so this year, we actually released the full Transforming 911 report. It's an amazing printed piece, but it's also available for free online. If you haven't had a chance to get the report, and if the website is still down, definitely please email us at contact@forwardthroughferguson.org, and I'm happy to get your hands on one of those reports. We also provided thought leadership on the impact of 911 delays on climate crises. So if you remember, we had some severe flooding this last summer. It really impacted people as far as electricity to their homes. And also it's just dangerous overall. There were people who actually either died or were injured as a result. And unfortunately, our 911 delays really exacerbated the issue. So I think the release of this tool, we're really hoping to equip people who are, everyday people and think, when I call 911, when I call for help, I want a quick response that basically meets my needs. And currently our system does not do that. It is outdated, it is fragmented, and it really doesn't meet people's needs in the way that people are really fully wanting that. And so we're hoping and inviting you to join us in this work. We're really excited for the second part of Transforming 911, which is analyzing St. Louis City data. We actually have a hold of that data and have some preliminary analyses. And so we ask that you be patient with us and excited with us as we are looking towards figuring out how to distribute that publicly. One of the things that is really evident in the data collection is that it's very complicated. So as you may know, if you've looked at the Transforming 911 data, that the codes, the protocols, the training across all of the public safety answering points really differ. And so analyzing the data is also challenging as well. What we're doing is trying to think about what is the data that is most important to our communities. How can we make sure that it's useful for people who are advocating for changes and also can help make sense of why our 911 system is the way it is. So please have a look out for our public report that is coming soon. We also are very excited that we received funding to advocate for the region's first 911 integrated civilian first responder pilot. We will be leading this project over the next 2 years. And I want to be clear that this funding is going to, first of all, we are going to reactivate our first responder alternative coalition, as you heard earlier, that we started back in 2021. And so if you're someone who is like, I know people or organizations that need to be at the table with this coalition, would love to hear from you. Again, that's contact@forwardthroughferguson.org. We're basically making sure to reactivate that coalition, also invite people who we want to make sure are at the table. We've really heard loud and clear from our residents that people want to have good behavioral health response, people want de-escalation, and people want their traffic encounters to be safe. And so those are the things that we're keeping in mind with this. In addition, we're also looking forward to storytelling. So if you have a 911 story, or if you really haven't thought about your 911 story, but realize, hey, actually, I do have an experience, or I know someone who's had an experience calling 911 and the response was maybe more delayed than I wanted or didn't get the response that I needed, we again would love to hear from you. Again, that's contact@forwardthroughferguson.org. And we're looking forward to seeing how this unfolds. We were also very much in the news as related to our Transforming 911 focus. It's one of those things that unfortunately people don't think about 911 until they have to use it. And then when they do use it, they might be disappointed with the response they get. We've also got stories where people call 911 and unfortunately were looked at as a suspect when they were really a victim of what was going on. But overall, we were really glad to serve as a resource for press when they were looking to make sense of what was happening, specifically around the climate crisis. And like I said, the flooding that people experienced earlier. And we were able to say, hey, this is why our 911 system is the way that it is. This is why it's fragmented. This is why first responders are so depleted and traumatized and stressed out. And these are some of our recommendations, our evidence-based recommendations for what should change. So this is just a list of all the coverage that we've gotten. And in addition, we're really excited that Annissa again is on board as our executive director. If you haven't checked out the St. Louis Magazine profile on her, we just talked today. You can pick it up at Straub's and probably other places across the region. It's a really lovely interview that kind of meshes her personal interest in this work. We all have personal interest in this work. If you've been in it, you have to bring a certain heart set to it. And so she talks a little bit about that and also what she's excited for in working with our organization. And also, we're also proud whenever any grantee of the Racial Healing and Justice Fund has some shine in the press. And so the Noir Bookshop is just an example of that. And they got a shout out in St. Louis Public Radio because of their book vending machine. But of course, if you look up Ujima STL, for example, that's a Black-owned farm. All sorts of projects are available in terms of press coverage, and we're really proud of everything that we do to make sure to advance healing and justice in the region. So the other thing that we're really excited about is our coalition work. We know that our impact is better when we're collectively doing it. So one of the new coalitions that we are co-facilitating is the Honest Elections Coalition, along with Show Me Integrity. It's this idea that basically a lot of our elections or our kind of civic engagement processes are really negatively impacted by dark money or large PACs or lobbyists. And what we're trying to do is put more power in the hands of the people. So there's many ways to do that. And one of those models is something called democracy dollars. Again, it's something that exists in cities across the country where people basically are able to get, a certificate where they can basically invest money into who they're voting for. And let's say, every resident has like 4 $25 certificates. They may have never, ever been able to contribute to a candidate in terms of funding. But in cities that have implemented this, they've been able to advance more grassroots candidates and more candidates of color than cities that haven't. And people have been more engaged with their processes in terms of voting. So we're really excited about developing that with our partners. We also are at the table for prosecutor organizing. And so it's really thinking about how do we hold accountable the person who is in the prosecutor's seat? How are we making sure that there is justice and equity in terms of courts and stuff like that? And of course, we are also at the Defund, Re-envision, Transform Coalition. Every first Thursday of the month, we have a meeting. There is not going to be a meeting in January, but there will be reconvening in February, and some of our focuses are thinking about ShotSpotter and the surveillance that is there, and basically thinking about how can we really address the root causes of harm and violence and invest in community safety. The other thing that we're looking at is also traffic violence. That has been something that has been in the news a lot for good reason, and we want to think about transit accessibility and things like that. So we're really proud to be in coalition with our partners at Action St. Louis, Arch City Defenders, and Freedom Community Center with the Defund, Re-envision, Transform Coalition. If you want to learn more, you can go to drt-stl.org. Again, that's drt-stl.org. And I'll pass it back to Sarah on the financials.
All right, thank you, everyone. So that concludes our work updates. I'll give a little bit of an overview about our financials before we move on to presenting our new strategic plan. So we do our financing on an accrual basis. This is a summary of our 2022. We've talked a lot about how FTF has grown over the years. So when we first started, we had a budget of 300,000 and 2 staff members, and it's just so great to see how far we've come, how much we've grown over the last several years, to now operating at over $1 million. I did want to touch just a little bit about the funding disparity that exists both locally and nationally in terms of funding for Black-led organizations and intermediary organizations. This is actually a presentation that we did do with Venture Cafe on the importance of justice philanthropy and what the disparity is. If your organization or your board is seeking more information, we're happy to do these types of presentations for you. You can reach out to us again at contact@forwardthroughferguson.org. So both locally and nationally, there is a disparity in funding when it comes to racial equity and racial justice. So nationally, about 7% of funding supports racial equity and racial justice. That's been pretty steady over the last several years. Locally, if you were keeping tabs on Give STL Day this year, you might have seen some articles or some news come out that about 5% of Give STL Day funds supported Black-led organizations. And there's a podcast here, St. Louis on the Air, that we recommend you listen to just to learn more information about this. So how do we address this? The solution is just having more unrestricted funding, general operating support, capacity building, opportunities for organizations to apply to. And for FTF in particular, this has been really helpful Especially because as we have grown our staff, we have increased our capacity and been able to do a lot more with our programmatic work. So having more opportunities to support unrestricted and general operating costs for Black-led organizations, intermediary organizations can really make a difference. All right, now I will go on to introduce our new strategic plan. This has been a really exciting process. I joined the team in January, so it was right when we were kickstarting the staff and board sessions about the strategic plan. So over the course of 8 months, there were several steps that we took in creating our strategic plan. So we engaged with national and local consultants. That was Learning for Action and Liberated Genius. And they conducted 28 interviews with stakeholders. And through those interviews, it really uncovered some information for us about what we should think about in terms of FTF's role in the region, in the nation, the impact we have, and what we should be thinking about as we're thinking about the future of our work. We also had several staff and board sessions, both joint sessions and then a couple committees and staff leadership sessions. And through that process, we were able to glean clarity on the current state of the organization, the vision moving forward, and what infrastructure we really needed to have in place to be successful. We also identified ourselves as an intermediary organization. So we identify as an intermediary between people most impacted by racism. That's grassroots organizations, foundations, elected and appointed leaders, government bodies, to create more equitable systems rooted in community vision. That's both within St. Louis and beyond. So when I get to our theory of change, we'll talk about how the change that we want to see in our region and both beyond our region. All right, this may look familiar to many of you. This is from the Ferguson Commission, the signature priorities that were outlined, and these continue to be signature priorities of Forward Through Ferguson. So all of the programmatic work we do will fall within these 4 signature priorities: justice for all, opportunity to thrive, youth at the center, and racial equity. You've heard a lot about justice for all, so we have done a lot of work in that with our Transforming 911. We will continue to do projects within each of these categories. However, there might not be an active project within these at all times. And then we will also continue to do movement tracking on the 189 calls to action as staff capacity allows. And then further future organizational work will depend on the current landscape. It'll depend on community input, resources, and then what the needs are based on the time. All right, so this is our new theory of change. So again, when developing this theory of change through our staff and board sessions, we narrowed down, how we define what we do, who we're trying to impact, and then the change we expect to see both locally in the St. Louis region and across the nation. So how do we define the 5 areas of work that Forward Through Ferguson does? First and foremost is storytelling. In all of the projects we do, storytelling is central and it's key. We want to amplify the lived experiences of impacted communities and people. Secondly, we provide support and strategy for coalitions and other organizing groups advancing policy and systems change, because we know this work cannot be done by just us alone. We also make policy recommendations grounded in trailblazing data and research. So an example is the Transforming 911 report and the recommendation for a first responder alternative pilot in our region. We also provide racial equity capacity building and education workshops to individuals, organizations, both locally and across the nation. We've done a handful of workshops virtually to organizations across the US, and it's been really beneficial, and it's a great resource that we have, and we can customize those to fit your specific needs, both as an individual, as a local community group, or as an institution. And then lastly, we lead next practices in justice philanthropy to ensure sustainable resources that empower people of color to lead, heal the core, and change the conditions of racial inequities. This is where the Racial Healing and Justice Fund falls into, and it is an important pillar that we would like to continue and wanted to make sure that it was part of our theory of change. All of these 5 aren't in a particular order, so we value all 5 of these at all times and want to make sure that all of our work falls within these categories. All right, So as we move from a kind of startup organization to scaling, we realize that there's a lot of internal infrastructure and structures that we need in place in order for us to succeed. So these were 4 strategies that were outlined in our strategic plan. They all have measurable outcomes and they all have several tactics that fall under it that we'll be working on over the next 3 years. But as a high level, codifying board and staff working relationships and structures, institutionalizing policies to support staff, a plan for organizational growth, and then strengthening our community engagement and accountability approach. A couple of the outcomes, these are not extensive. We have several outcomes that we expect to see over the next 3 years, but just on a high level, we are expanding our board of directors. We actually just finished our interviews yesterday and are excited to onboard a new set of board members to our board in January. We're also working on a 10-year organizational growth plan that will both complement which of our programmatic work we need to focus on and how the staff what staffing capacities we need in order to do that. We're also working on a formal community engagement process for organizational governance and a community participatory process to set a community activation plan. So this is similar to what was done in 2018 with STL 2039, and we'll do a series of community engagements, listening sessions, town halls, surveys, just ways to get feedback from the community on what are the priorities that we should be focusing on, what the perception is on the work that has been done, and what are the current needs of our community. And now I will pass it on to Annissa to talk about what's coming up next.
Thank you, Sarah. So we've talked about where we've come from, what we've been doing. I think you all see that 2023 was a lot for us. We grew, we expanded, we stretched, and we still intend to stretch and grow even more. So in 2024 and beyond, we hope to be able to dive into the transforming 911 city data. We've already done extensive work in the county, so we look forward to being able to share with you what we find out in the city of St. Louis, because we are in fact a regional organization. We're looking to work on our community activation plan, implement our new strategic plan, which staff worked on for a good 1.5 years. And a large part of my onboarding has been to make sure that I'm secure and that I understand what we will be doing. So much of it is internal and speaks to our infrastructure, but it also speaks to our growth and our ability to be able to serve the St. Louis region in the future. And so we're excited to really dive in and to implement that. Our advocacy around the first responder alternative. We know that law enforcement is in a situation where they are doing work that they are often not qualified or comfortable doing, which can often lead to unfortunate circumstances and sometimes even death. And so if we can work to find a response that is an alternative to sending those out who aren't necessarily always the most qualified or empathetic in certain situations, we are excited to be able to work around that and to find a means to get that going. Evaluation and a wrap up of the Racial Healing and Justice Fund. So we know that we started this. We know that it is something that has been a blessing to those in the region to be able to fund those who typically could not receive funding and who often are ignored by the philanthropic community in the St. Louis area and beyond, right? And so we want to make sure that in our wrapping up of this first stage of this fund, because we do hope that it will grow and become something that is endowed for the future, that we have the proper tools in order to make sure that when it comes back, and I am a believer that it will come back because it is so phenomenal, that we understand what we did wrong, we understand what we did right, and through this evaluation, it will be even better than what it was in this last iteration. Honest Elections Coalition speaks for itself. We know what's going to happen in 2024. We know that there are several things that are going to be on ballot and several people who are on ballot. And while we do not take a formal stance, we do know that everyone has the right or should have the right to be in the election process and for there to be transparency in that process, whether it's through funding, whether it's through candidacy, whether it's through people's ability to participate. And so the Honest Elections Coalition is something that I'm excited about. I think you all know I'm excited about all of it, honestly, right? So with that, we are we know what a big year 2024 is in many ways. Public racial capacity building trainings. So I want to give a shout out to Fabra for the work that she has done, not only to stabilize Forward Through Ferguson, but to also bring this type of training to the community and to those who really want to do the hard work of sitting in uncomfortable places, asking the questions, and learning what they need to learn in order to be better. So, Fabra, thank you for being unwavering in ensuring that this resource is available. And then finally, y'all, we're going to refresh our website. You know, for somebody that had to go online and try to figure out some things about Forward Through Ferguson as I was going through the interview process, it's a great website. It has a lot of information, but better is coming. And so shout out to Ja and Jeanne and all the staff and all the work that's been done on it so far. But when I tell you that better is coming, it is coming, and it's going to be just like so great and so awesome. And then of course, much, much more that I won't get into because, you know, we wanted to keep you, but we don't want to keep you long, but there's so much that's coming forward. So a couple of things to move with us and to move forward into action. You are always welcome to have a one-on-one with us. I think you have heard that the email address is contact@forwardthroughferguson.org. Again, contact@forwardthroughferguson.org. So you are more than welcome to reach out to have a one-on-one with us. I took a peek. I see some community partners who already know how to reach us, but if you have not, that is the way to reach us, contact@forwardthroughferguson.org. You can build an ongoing partnership to collaborate with us. We would love to engage your employees, your boards, via our racial equity capacity building programs. We would love to talk to you about how we can customize our programming and our workshops and our speaking engagements and even our community events to bring what Forward Through Ferguson does to your organization. And what we do is that we help people rise to their best nature. And we ensure that those who often may not feel that they are a part are included and spoken for. And if you would like to partner with us in order to ensure that happens, we're here. Contact@forwardthroughferguson.org. And we also invite you to share your 911 story or to join our First Responder Alternative Coalition. So, Sarah, how did I do?
That was great.
Great. I feel like there's one more thing though.
One more thing. Go ahead, Fabra. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
before Q&A, just I think we would be remiss if we didn't also just recognize that next year will be 10 years since
Yes.
and we know that folks in the community will be curious about, like, where's FTF? What are they doing? What are they up to? And so, we do have some plans to support what folks in the community are already gearing up for next year, particularly Mike Brown's family, in some partnerships with the Missouri Historical Society and some other local institutions that we have been thinking about this a lot. And just please stay in touch with us and stay in tune for some more public announcements about what those opportunities would look like for us to recognize the moment together as a community. So,
Yeah, 2024 is a big year. And part of the reason why I'm here is because of what happened 10 years ago. And not just from the organizational purpose, but for how it impacted my life. So Fabra, thank you for speaking that into this space. And I'll turn it back over to Sarah.
Thank you. I will stop the recording. This